Hello and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. Today I'm going to talk about some of the economic decisions and financial decisions that have been taken by the government in the last couple of days. But before that, in fact, just before I was doing this blog, I was reading a book by Mr. Rakesh Maria, former police commissioner of Mumbai. His book is called Let Me Say It Now. And this particular chapter that I was talking about is titled Stop It If You Can. The book is a page turner and it talks about all the sensational crimes that Mumbai and Maharashtra have seen, which Mr. Maria played a role in investigating. But this particular chapter lists the spate of serial bomb blasts that we have faced, not just in Mumbai and Maharashtra because there were linkages, but all over the country. And it got me thinking how easily one forgets what we have gone through. These were the days of absolutely sensational jihadi violence where with impunity bombs were being planted and killing people all over the place. So if you remember, in this period from 2004 to 2008, you had bomb blasts in Ahmedabad, Delhi, Mumbai, Pune, Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, Assam, Manipur, Tripura. And where were they planted? Everywhere. Temples, mosques, trains, malls, bus stops, educational institutions, police stations, and even most diabolically at hospitals. So when people from one bomb blast were rushing the injured to a hospital, there would be a blast that happens at the hospital itself. We lived through those times when life was cheap and we didn't know what was going to happen. And over a period of time, since it's all sort of reduced dramatically, we seem to have forgotten it. Such dastardly attacks have come down, have not ended. And in the last few days, when we see the country roiled with communal tension, it makes you remember that we've gone through a time like that, and are we going through it again? Do we want to go through it again? But this column is not about Mr. Maria's book or about communal violence, but the implications of what all this means to the economy and to people. Because remember, even between 2004 and 8, it wasn't just this. There was a global financial crisis. In India, we were not affected, but we had an extremely corrupt United Progressive Alliance government at the center, which allowed a loan mela of sorts to start with the excuse that people had to be given liquidity because of the crisis, that those loans were never taken back. Crony capitalists took advantage of it to loot the national resources of India, whether it was telecom spectrum, whether it was coal mines, everything seemed up for sale. Hugely inflated infrastructure projects were coming up all over the place. Most of them are defaulters, leaving thousands of crores of bad loans in banks. It all added up to, believe it or not, 10 lakh crore. And who pays the price? Not the paltry recoveries that are being made by banks through the bankruptcy tribunal or otherwise. It is the exchequer. It is a person who doesn't even have a bank account who pays, because the money to recapitalize public sector banks, as I repeatedly say, goes straight from the government's treasury, right? And again, this was not the only thing that was going wrong. We had atrocities, attacks against women. The worst of them was the Nirbhaya rape case, which finally broke people's backs, cut through public apathy, and got people on the streets. You may have forgotten visuals of students in Delhi being attacked with water cannons because they were out protesting and wanting action. This morphed into this movement against corruption, which led to a regime change. Isn't there a sense of deja vu when you look at all of this? Because we have leaders who are needlessly fomenting communal violence and strife, roiling the country in problems at a time when they should be focused on fixing the economy, getting our growth rate up, solving problems that affect people, and creating jobs. Instead, we have hate speeches, we're putting people against people, and what we have in terms of policy making is badly drafted laws, statutes and policies, and even worse, shoddy implementation. In this situation of economic distrust, we now have the whole coronavirus threat which is affecting an already weakened economy. I think the focus of this government ought to be completely on getting the economy up and running. Let's see whether the measures that they've taken in the last couple of days are going to answer. Let's first look at the bill that was passed a couple of days ago, which says Vivad Se Vishwas Bill 2020. It was rammed through the Lok Sabha, and in the middle of all the din that was happening there over the Delhi riots. Now, what does this scheme do? It's a direct tax amnesty scheme which gives a complete waiver from interest and penalty to people who've got a tax demand or a tax notice which is under dispute, which says pay the tax, you don't have to pay the rest, but you have to do it before 31st March. It is going to be extended until 30th June with an additional payment, but so long as you pay up the demand. Now, there are two issues here. Will it work? Yes, for those who stuffed their bank accounts with demonetized notes and converted black money, it's an escape because they're probably just going to pay up and they pay 33%, no interest, no penalties, and get away. So it's fantastic for them. The government will collect money. There are people who are facing cases with penny stock manipulation. In fact, the Economic Times has written all of this. They may benefit as well. The finance minister has said there are 483,000 direct tax cases pending in various appellate forums such as the Commissioner of Appeals, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, High Courts and the Supreme Court. Will that number really come down? We don't know, because many of them pertain to the public sector. In fact, the biggest ones probably pertain to the public sector. Now, remember what happens. A tax dispute arises only when you do not agree with the fact that the income tax department has disallowed something or feels that there is a tax that's due. It's not something that you're trying to evade. So the tax that's demanded is so big that it's worth your while to file a case and drag it through and wait. Now, when there is an issue of law or principle that's involved and you're waiting for it to be solved, are you going to pay up the tax? What was the point in you litigating in the first place? So there is going to be a whole lot of companies that are not going to accept this. These will be private companies, listed companies. Public sector companies, I'm afraid, will probably be arm twisted. Now, remember, the government is not just passing a bill and sitting down. While it says Vishwas Tak, this Vishwas is being nudged, tweaked with a little bit of arm twisting. So, the Business Standard has reported that the government has sent over 5,627 notices to people saying take advantage of this amnesty scheme. What it doesn't say is or else they, it's not going to be easy for them. It also says that lots of people, 1,730, have agreed to pay up. We don't know who these are, we don't know what kind of cases these are, but it will be partly useful. It's not going to be working if you're going to arm twist public sector banks, right? So let's look at something else that they did. Lots of things happening in the last 3 days. One is decriminalizing company law. Now, this is an amendment bill that was cleared by the government. This is called the Companies Second Amendment Bill 2019, which was cleared by the cabinet on 4th March. And it removed several instances where technical lapses and small issues were criminalized and there were jail sentences. If you ask me, I think this is a good thing. It's a good decision, a positive development, because government, and again, a lot of it happened when the Companies Bill was rewritten under the UPA. There were a lot of protests. The introduction of a ridiculous corporate social responsibility payment of 2% was also introduced at that time. This government came in and tightened things even more. So the whole attitude was being anti-business till the time that the economy is suffering and people are squealing. So every little lapse led to a jail sentence. I think good sense has finally prevailed, and some of the relaxations even pertain to the CSR, where they said if you don't spend the money, you couldn't roll it over, and there were jail terms, there were enormous red tape. I don't know if all of that is going to be removed, but again, this is some of the good things that are happening. It's not as though the government is saying that we decriminalize and let off fraudsters, because if you remember, a couple of years ago, the Serious Frauds Investigation Office has been given more teeth, it's been given the powers of arrest, and it's been doing a good job, especially with the investigation against willful defaulters like Bhushan Steel or infrastructure leasing and financial services. So this is a good development. Let's hope it doesn't get buried in the avalanche of negativity that's all over the place. The third decision that they took is about cooperative banks, where they said cooperative banks, this happened after the failure of Punjab and Maharashtra Cooperative Bank, so they said they're going to come under the Reserve Bank of India. But this unfortunately seems like a half-baked solution. There are three things that they did. So this bank, PMC Bank, has failed, remains a zombie. It's neither dead nor alive. It's under an RBI administrator. It cannot earn money. It can only spend. It's got 120 branches alive. So what did the government do? They increased deposit insurance from 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. That doesn't help these depositors. They said cooperative banks come under the RBI, which is great, doesn't help PMC Bank. But even here it's half-baked because administrative control remains under the Registrar of Cooperatives, and it's not that the Reserve Bank of India has been doing a great job on supervision. It has failed repeatedly. It did nothing about Diwan housing, it did nothing about il&fs. So just bringing them under RBI's umbrella is not necessarily going to work. Let's see how that goes. And meanwhile, in 5 months, you remember I've been saying it repeatedly in my video blogs, cost of keeping PMC Bank alive is 1 crore a day. And from September 23rd, this is the money, depositors' money, that's being systematically eaten up. The government needs to find solutions. They need a resolution. They need to either get that bank up and ticking, allow a takeover, or shut it down. They're doing nothing. It is just eating depositors' money. That is not a sign of a government that understands the gravity of the situation. It's exactly the same with these hasty bank mergers. So another decision in the last 2-3 days is the finance minister announcing that there's no question of holding back the bank mergers. 10 public sector banks will be merged and made into 4. We've talked about it a couple of weeks ago in another video blog. Now the sad thing is that this is hasty. It's not about merging balance sheets alone. We need to get these banks working. In what way is this decision going to drive economic growth? In what way is going to help? We don't know, because there is nothing that is being done simultaneously to remove them from under political control and political influence, stop political meddling in the banks, create autonomy, and make senior management accountable. None of this is happening. Will mergers alone answer? Well, as a banker friend says, that maybe there's less of corruption in 4 banks than 10, and if there is, it can be visible, so there may be a small benefit. Is it worth the pain? We'll have to wait and watch. Now, while all this is happening, today there's one piece of what looks like a silver lining, which is the government finally seems to have woken up to the fact that if Yes Bank, you remember I've done a video blog on this, if when it declares its results in another 10 days on 14th March and there's a huge problem, then there's going to be a run on the bank and it needs a bailout. So I said a couple of weeks ago that there had been a proposal where a private consortium, private banks getting together, they wanted SBI to put in 5,000 crores. Today, the news media has been saying, and quoting the State Bank of India chairman as saying that Yes Bank will not be allowed to fail and a public-private consortium is going to be looked at. Now, again, a very positive development if it works positively. Let's hope that they're able to force the private sector, because once there is a collapse of a bank, the enormous pain in the system affects everybody. There's lots of investments from insurance companies, institutions in Yes Bank's bonds, the tier 1 bonds. There are people who have got mutual fund investments, there are pension funds and others who are directly or indirectly affected. So you can't have another systemic round of pain that happened after il&fs in 2018, Diwan housing in 2019. We cannot have it again. So it's good news that they talk about it. Let's hope that SBI puts in a small amount of money, leads a consortium, they get the required concessions at the right price from SEBI, not at an inflated price at which Yes Bank seems to be today, but that it is resolved without creating and fomenting another round of panic and pushing the economy back instead of dealing with all the things that it's forced to deal with. So we wait and watch, and we hope that this government realizes that this is not the time to create more problems. It is not enough to do things. You have to have a sense of calm, sense of peace, and a sense of mission that you're out there giving good administration, pulling the economy out of the rut, and doing things that is good for the people, not have them fighting on the streets. Thank you.